Hello, friends. I think I'm doing okay. I'm sharing a screen. My name's Chris Armstrong. I am sometimes doing YouTubes and podcasts and things. I've done a series before reading my own blogs and stuff, but I thought today it'd be quite fun to start reading some other favorite blogs. And I'm going to be reading one by the great Callum Akehurst-Ryan, who is with me today,
Hello, I am. Hi, how's it going?
which is lovely to see. Hi, Callum. So the way we're going to be running today is I'm going to be reading through this blog post, this manual testing a dirty word, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about any questions we come up with, any thoughts, where minds are, and if we change anything with the blog post. So if you're ready to go, Carl, let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Okay, so is manual testing a dirty word? Now, you've been a part of a few discussions this week. This was September last year, including on LinkedIn. You're very active on LinkedIn. Follow Cal. We'll put a link in the old comments later about the term manual testing. Generally, within the community, it appears that there's a negative connotation around the term, and you wanted to find out why. Note, you consider yourself to be a manual tester, and you have spoken before about not minding the term to describe yourself. However, you're aware that this is not everybody's preference. I imagine we'll get a bit deeper into that first, but if you've got anything you want to add first.
Yeah, and definitely we dig into it as we go along. But it's very much one of those terms that people think, oh, you're unskilled, you're a scripter, and people really online are trying to distance themselves from it. You have a lot of camps where people just go, no, I'm anything but a manual tester. Don't say the word manual. There's no such thing as manual automation, which,
Mm.
fun fact, there is because we have AI now. So we have human coding and computer coding. But yeah, it's something that it seems like a very vitriolic
Mm.
conversation that happens on LinkedIn at conferences and so on. I don't know. Have you seen any of this before?
Yeah, I would probably, in the simplest terms, I'd refer to it as linguistic gatekeeping.
Yeah,
I see a lot of people sort of hear it and it either opens or closes doors, it deviates and it becomes a problem in and of itself that takes away from what you're supposed to be trying to talk about.
very much that. It becomes one of those conversations where you have people who probably understand what is meant by manual testing. So, like hiring managers, developers, project managers, and so on. They know what it means. It just means not automation. But when you start jumping and be like, haha, no, you're wrong, because there's no such thing as manual automation. There's no such, you're just removing a qualifier from being able to help someone understand what's going on. And we do this a lot in testing. We try to like rename things
We
based on
really
personal
do.
preference, and it just alienates other people.
Mm. Okay, well let's go on to your definition of manual testing. Like with many terms in testing, there's not a clear answer. If you ask 10 different testing experts, then you'll probably get 10 different responses for what it means. Generally, though, when we say manual testing, we usually mean not automation, as you said, with manual testers being testers who don't write automated tests. That means manual testing can cover a wide variety of things, running scripts, exploratory testing, use of tools, non-functional testing, technical testing, including API testing, and critical analysis for risks. It's a big old term that can mean a lot of things. So why is it something that we don't like? Hello, Eric Cartman. So it's a term that you avoid. Here are some of the comments that came from you asking what the term manual testing meant to people on LinkedIn. The term frustrates me. It's just testing. It's a trigger word for many experienced testing professionals. I don't like using the term manual testing at all. It's a word used to inflame a subject and take away focus from uplifting each other. There's nothing manual about testing, period. It's a terrible and antiquated term that needs to go extinct. I really struggle to hear the term manual testing used. The first thing I think is followed by why do people insist on differentiating manual from automated? I understand why people might use it, but it's mostly meaningless for me. It reduces people to test executors. You don't get manual developers and similar nonsense like principal test anything.
which was really funny, that last comment that I included, because there was somebody who really didn't like my professional title and really wanted to highlight that to me. They'd obviously not worked in an engineering structure where you have staff engineers and principal engineers,
Mm,
and they tried to make it very clear to me that any sorts of titles like that is just egocentric rather than for having a specific role in something. So yeah, they were very clear at saying this was a nonsense phrase, and that some other testing terminology or engineering terminology again
mm,
was nonsense. I think, and I don't know, but I think that just came from a, oh, it's not a term I use at my organization. I don't know what it means. Therefore, could it be somebody just trying to self-aggrandize themselves? So I think they saw principal engineer
mm,
being an industry term, being something equivalent to top voice tester or testing warlock, or all those sorts of things where people try to distance themselves from just the reality of the mundane everyday,
mm.
potentially.
It's interesting. I've seen people saying, "I'm not a manual tester. I don't test manuals," and
Yeah, I'm surprised that one didn't come up.
there's Brijesh Deb has his whole thing. So there's no such thing as manual testing with a train smashing through stuff. I've seen that meme thrown about a bit on, on LinkedIn.
But what you can see is a lot of the comments that happened here is that it again, lots of negativity came from it.
Mm,
Nobody here is really saying like a lot of positive things or what it means to them. They're just going, no, don't do it, don't like it. It's
it's that linguistic gatekeeping happening again, yeah.
yeah,
And there's a lot of weight that comes with this, a lot of anchoring and cognitive bias and experience that people have, and we get it. And I think we dive into that now. So
yeah,
you apologize for not crediting people. You hadn't if you hadn't asked people if they were cool, so you didn't want to sort of throw that things out, so which is fair enough. As we can see, there's lots of negativity that comes from the term when digging into it. It seems to be directed to a couple of themes. Manual testers are seen as less technical. It's not a useful term to describe what we do, and it's not marketable. So diving in, less technical. The term manual testing usually, for most people, begins and ends with testers who review test scripts at the business layer. This would mean that the view of manual testing is limited to simple checks without getting under the hood or into the details of anything. And you've got this nice little diagram here. Do you want to just talk through it quick?
yeah. So um, from the top down to the bottom, we're sort of going deeper into the stack, basically, where there's an increased view of what's technical. And what's technical is usually set out by people's perceptions of what the market or engineers think of as being technical. At the top, we've got business driven test scripts, so seen as the least technical. Then ad hoc exploratory testing, so bug bashes and the like, or just clicking around to find out. Then we have structured risk-based exploratory testing. Further down the line, seen as more technical, is that full stack or tools-based exploratory testing. And then the most technical, code-based or automation-heavy exploratory testing, stuff that Marit's doing, that sort of like
Mm,
very highly seen as technical. What this view of technical really seems to be is closer to the code, closer to the engineering, further away from the business. And that's kind of the perception of
mm,
testing and technical testing, that the closer to the code you are, the more technical you are. And that's just aligning us to what other engineers are basically doing in a quality engineering space. And then the diagram also shows, yeah, this perception of what manual testing is the least technical
mm,
based on that viewpoint, with bug bashes or business UI driven test scripts being run. Um, just to make it really clear, this view of what technical is not one I subscribe to, but this is more of a diagram that shows that overall vision that the industry is at, that
mm.
the code based you are, the more technical you are, the more business driven you are, the less technical you are,
Yep.
which is a fantasy. And I'm sure that you've seen that as well.
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. So let's have a little look here. If we're doing some of that more technical stuff, then we wouldn't want to be perceived as only doing the basics, right? So manual testing becomes a perception of something lesser than what we can do, or a view that it's less senior and we distance ourselves from it. As people start to distance themselves from the term, especially thought leaders and known faces in the industry, it has a feedback loop effect. People may want to associate themselves with those thought leaders, so also distancing themselves as well. The other side of things is that manual testing is not automation, so is seen as less technical. We get a lot of organizations and career paths telling us to level up into automation as that'll make you more technical as opposed to differently technical. So if saying you do manual testing is saying you don't do automation, the fear becomes being seen as not technical.
So first thing I'm noticing here is there's some spelling mistakes that I
Oh,
need
you know,
to.
the 10 people that watch these videos usually will see I've discovered these things in a lot of my blog posts also.
It's what happens when you write a lot of these on your notes app on your phone.
Mm,
But yeah, that first term there, that technicality,
yeah.
um, because a lot of people want to be seen as technical, they want to be seen as doing things. They want to distance themselves from something that's seen as untechnical.
Yeah.
So if you've got lots of people who are just doing script-based testing, who are just doing confirmatory testing, there's that, and that's seen as less technical. It's more business related. It's not diving into the code. It's not diving into things.
Mm,
A lot of people going, well, I don't do that. I'm doing more than that. So they want to distance themselves from what they're not doing. It's a lot easier to create a new term for something or distance yourself from an old term rather than try to change the whole industry's view of what a term is. If we, as an industry, have the perception that manual testing just means I can only use the UI, I can only follow like requirements that I'm given, and I don't look into the code at all,
mm,
then you want to make sure that you're going, well, no, that's not me. So you distance yourself from what that is rather than trying to pull people in along for that journey. It's very similar to people climbing the ladder and then pulling it up after them. It's not
mm,
the overall view of the world to be like, all right, as manual testers, we all do all these technical things, or it's a spectrum of things. You're trying to go, no, not that. I'm this. I'm an engineer. I'm a tester. I just do testing.
yeah.
It's very much a term that it seemed to be that's being distanced from effectively in order to show that you're something different or new, or in some cases, just being a bit snobby and going, no, I'm not like the other girls. I'm better than that. I'm quirky and cool and I look at code. It's yeah, that kind of thought. I don't know if that resonates or made sense
It,
to you.
it does. I mean, like we say, I talked about linguistic gatekeeping. I think there's a lot of anchors that we have around terminology and even technical gatekeeping and things like that. I think it's very obvious, and I can understand where people come from. Things maybe they've got baggage where they've been treated in certain organizations or their perceptions of things. Like you mentioned, thought leaders talking about certain pieces that maybe resonate with you. You can see why these things happen, but also it can prove to be problematic. Um,
Oh,
Not a useful term. Here we have, why do we even say manual testing? We don't say manual development. Oh, so heard that one before. It's true that we don't, but isn't that because all development is manual? Until developers start automating coding from generative AI, they have to do all the coding themselves. So for developers, this isn't a useful distinction. Instead, we have front end, back end or Java, Python, C++ developers, as that tells us what they do. So for testing, is manual tester a useful term that describes what we do? Well, for some, yes, as it describes that they can do not automation testing. And for others, it's not as useful because an absence of something isn't a description of what they can do. So if manual testing, as described above, is overwhelmingly seen as following business scripts, then how do I showcase what I can do? I could call myself an exploratory tester, a toolsmith, a risk analyst, a bug archaeologist, I like that, quality
hmm.
coach, engineer, tester. These all form parts of a skill set, but also don't quite explain fully what someone can do, or in the case of a tester, is just holistic. but they're all seen as more technical. So maybe the assumption is that I can do the other things because I can do this. These other titles become more useful because they don't come with baggage of being seen as less than or untechnical.
A really key thing here that I didn't actually write about, but maybe I should have written about, that as you move away from calling yourself a manual tester and you sort of say, oh, I'm a quality engineer, I'm a holistic tester,
Mm,
the unsaid assumption is, oh, I can do automation, or I'm hiding under the rug that we don't do automation. It's trying to position yourself in that, oh, well, yeah, of course I'm closer to engineering and closer to the code. So of course I write code without really saying it. And that's where a lot of this fear comes from. If you say you're a manual tester, you're saying you're not an automator. And a lot of the rhetoric around the industry at the moment is if you aren't an automator, then you're nothing. So people just want to jump away from, oh, I'm not an automator, um, because they don't want to be left behind. We
mm.
get marketability, but yeah. So there's a lot of terms out there that sometimes are
So
useful and
many.
sometimes are really helpful. Like I'm an exploratory tester. I explore things.
Mm,
That's great for when we're talking to other testers who get what exploratory testing is. Not so great when we talk to organizations who don't know what those things are.
yeah.
But all of these terms are really trying to like nichely carve out, like saying, I'm a Java developer, I'm a C++, I'm a back end or a front end. It's really trying to slice down and say, these are the things that I do. But it's taking us away from what the market understands of what that terminology is.
And you've led in beautifully to that next bit there. Not marketable. You've Resident Evil 4 merchant has a selection of good things on sale.
Trying to force out a couple of nerdy references here.
It's beautiful. Market forces, capitalism, love it or hate it, they shape our careers and what's seen as valuable in testing. Organizations want technical testers, and because managers aren't always deep into the nuance of the testing community, and let's face it, that's a spectrum in and of itself, that
Yes.
means they want automation engineers or SDITs or SDETs. Being seen as a manual tester isn't helpful because it's seen as untechnical, less than other testers, and it's not descriptive of what we can do. That means less job opportunities in the current market and potentially less career advancement. So, of course, people wouldn't want to use the term. They want to be able to advance and feel like they can get better jobs. Plus, in a world where a number of our thought leaders and peers decry manual testing as lesser, we're conditioned to see it the way that they do.
I mean, I think that's it's still very relevant. It's
Mm,
kind of what I've seen. Like if the whole industry is there going, no, there's no such thing as manual testing. Oh no, there's no such thing. You've got to be technical. You've got to be, doing automation closer to the code.
mm,
Then of course people are going to see that. Oh, the industry doesn't want that. Market forces don't want that, and they're going to try and protect themselves. Like I
yeah.
fall into this. Yes, I am a manual tester at heart, but I have to really showcase the things I can do and make a portfolio and put out there that I'm a technical manual tester or an API tester or whatever, so
Mm.
that people know, oh, this is someone that can help me. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Chris? Like, what have you? Yeah.
I mean, if you ever look on job boards and things and job descriptions, it's tricky, isn't it? Because especially in the world where I guess a lot of talent acquisition folks are trying to it's easier to apply for jobs than ever before. And so they'll get hundreds, thousands maybe applying for jobs. There needs to be a way to sort of filter by keyword. But
Mhm.
because testing as a spectrum has so many nuances and it's got so many bits and bobs, it's hard to categorize various different things. And that makes A, searching for jobs quite difficult, but B, also filtering through candidates quite difficult. And it's a problem that I think it is there on both sides, and talking about it more will only help with clarity clarification. And look, we've all got different wants, different needs, places that we want to go, places, things that we want to achieve. But as an industry, you know, standardization probably isn't quite the right thing, but certainly being in the same book, if not the same page, would be helpful.
And you tend to find as well with that same book, if the industry isn't quite where you are with their understanding on that book, when
Mm.
you do find job specs that are for manual testers, it's for those, oh, we just need somebody to come in, run the scripts we give you and tick them off.
Yeah.
And if you are like a more senior tester, if you are a more technical tester, if you're doing other things, it just might not be for you. So searching for those things is difficult. But yeah, having so many different titles is diversifying the what would you call it, the pool, the talent
Yeah.
pool.
Yeah.
And rather than people just trying to understand, right, there are people that can do automation, there are people that can do the other things, they're now trying to learn so many titles that they probably, like hiring managers, recruiters, and so on, get burnout. I don't know how often you've spoken to like technical testing recruitment officers or agents, but they don't know loads about testing because there's just so much to know, or they get confused by the synonyms for everything.
Well, yes, and of course we get stuck because it's like chicken and egg, right? A lot of organizations aren't in a position to take what we see as dynamic and new and fancy, and there's different flavors of agile here and this, that, and the other. It's very hard to understand that context, and software development's a spectrum, testing's a spectrum, on top of a spectrum. It's tricky, and the time it takes to understand the full context, it costs money. We're in capitalism, right? And so it's very difficult. But we could talk about that forever, but let's move on to the blog again. So the other side, from conversations, some people are happy with the term and they use it to describe human-based testing, exploration and critical thinking. Testing like a user would, using common sense, influence, and critical thinking, using human instinct and experience to explore and learn. When I am testing, I am constantly thinking, what if? Or why is that? Or can I? Or will it let me? I'm constantly asking questions of the software. An opportunity for a tester to get the feel of a feature, to really understand what technically is the feature about by the manual setup. Whilst this was not the majority of people, there are still those out there that don't mind the term and they actively describe themselves as a manual tester. With this in mind, it's important to recognise that it's not a dirty word for everyone and that we shouldn't dismiss these people from the conversation. Absolutely. Saying there's no such thing or that would be testing manuals, hey, there you go, or like could alienate them and dismiss a number of our peers and colleagues just because of our own distaste for a term, linguistic gatekeeping, especially for those people who are reclaiming the term and using it to possibly be role models or advocates for the many other manual testers out there.
The unsaid thing there is that I'm basically relating it to the word queer.
Hey,
um,
so many things in our industry do transcend and move across our
yes,
lives. So avoiding the conversation, the manual versus automation conversation can come across as so condescending that people opt out altogether. There are testers avoiding engaging with each other because of the negative connotations around their area of expertise. Well, this creates silos, which means we lose out on information. Sharing it prevents holistic testing. Duplication of effort with things being tested by manual and automation testers. Lack of strategic thinking overall, with silos only focusing on themselves and not the bigger picture. No sharing vital information about opportunities for testing, e.g., exploration leading to automation cases. Individual testers thinking they have to do it all, resulting in too much testing for one person to manage. If we're unable to bridge the gap because the community has created a dirty word, then testing in organizations will suffer as a result. So, is manual testing a dirty word? In some circles, yes. It very much is a word that is looked on with skepticism, and understandably so. By making the word dirty, do we lose the importance, an important piece of testing conversations?
yeah. So for me, I mean, I still think that resonates and rings true to me, especially within some organizations where, like, just the idea of having terminology or having tiers or castes of
Mm,
testers, like, just automatically creates silos where people just won't engage with the other side of the fence. Like, oh, that's if you ever worked with people that go, oh, it's too technical for me, I don't understand it, rather
mm.
than try to bridge and understand things. They really limit themselves out. So I think that's still very relevant to today.
I think so. What I'm going to do is stop sharing so we can see our lovely faces on full screen. Huzzah! Hello. So,
Hey.
thank you very much, Cal. Um, this is a really important conversation and one that we need to be having in public. Thank you for writing this. The comments and stuff will be really interesting to hear what people have got. Feedback, please comment on Cal's blog post. That will be linked at the bottom. And if you've got a blog that you think maybe I should be reacting to with the author, please let me know as well. I think on YouTube you're supposed to like, share, and subscribe too, so do that. Any last words, Cam?
That in the market at the moment, things are really difficult for testers. There was a lot of people, there's a lot of redundancies happening. There's a lot of people looking for jobs.
Mm,
We need to create outreach as much as possible. We need to not be having discussions that could limit people's career options. So if you're having those discussions being like automation is the only way, manual is the only way, this is a dirty word for anything,
mm,
stop and think, because you saying that might influence a hiring manager or a recruiter to not consider someone for a role. And that can be really problematic. So let's uplift each other in the testing community, be supportive. And at a time where people are really struggling to find work, like really try and find ways to elevate and push people upwards rather than dismissing them, saying that they shouldn't exist, saying that it's not a thing, especially now.
mm. Well, thank you very much. Where can people find you online?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Akehurst-Ryan or Cakehurst-Ryan, and also on my website at cakehurstryan.com or cakehurstryan.com. I have a very unique name. If you Google me, you'll find me.
Perfect. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye.
Bye.